Hello and welcome to this Friday's edition of Alaska Weather. Moving on to the first graphic is, I believe, the hazardous weather graphic. And there are winter weather advisories out for the northeast and eastern interior areas from the Alaska Range all the way up to and including the Brooks Range. And that's that goes into effect tonight and stays in effect through Saturday night until about noon on Sunday. Looking for several inches of snow to fall with locally gusty east-northeast winds, colder temperatures, and that areas of blowing snow could reduce visibility to less than half a mile at times. And from there, looking at satellite image, you can see clouds coming southward over the northeast interior and then kind of trailing out and thinning out over the western Arctic coast there, as well as in toward the mid-Yukon River Valley areas. But light snow now falling from the eastern Arctic coast across the North Slope into Anatuvik Pass. Fort Yukon now carrying light snow, and clouds on the increase, slowly thickening there over the upper Tanana Valley 40-mile country, and that'll continue tonight with probably some snow moving into those areas as well. In fact, it may go all the way down to the Alaska Range here before morning. Otherwise, a lot of sunshine across southern Alaska today. Temperatures in the Kenai Peninsula and the Manauskas-Susitna Valley rising into the mid to upper 50s by mid-afternoon, away from the inlet there. And sunshine also in the Copper River Basin, virtually just clear skies from the North Gulf Coast down to Kodiak Island and the eastern Bering Sea from Bristol Bay out toward the Pribilofs. And really, you can see some cirrus trying to push in towards Shimia with the next front that actually is a much stronger front and will bring storm force winds in late tonight and tomorrow out toward the western Aleutians. And then another system spreading up from the south there, trying to push some rain into extreme southern southeast coast today, late today, with just an increase in the clouds up to the north or through the central panhandle with mostly sunny skies from about Juneau on up to Haines, Skagway, and those areas out toward Yakutat, sunshine. On the chart, there's a snow along the eastern Arctic coast pushing down. Actually, now it's all the way down to Fort Yukon. And it'll continue to drop southward with that trough and the cold upper level low dropping southwestward into the state, and it'll keep it cold over through the weekend. It'll keep temperatures below freezing over the interior areas, even during the daytime hours north of the Alaska Range. And then that system down to the south, starting to spread some rain into the southern panhandle, but dry elsewhere across the Aleutians. See a lot of clear skies out over the central and eastern Bering Sea. Fox Islands into the Alaska Peninsula to solid sunshine, Bristol Bay to Kodiak Island, into the northern southeast coast, and then right way out there on the edge of the picture there, west of the Komodorskis, you can see the tightening pressure field, and with that, a pretty good front coming in, so look for gale force winds to develop tonight out over the far western Aleutians. Otherwise, that high pressure area holding over the central and eastern Bering Sea. Don't look for much change there. Light winds and mostly clear skies. Definitely dry conditions that'll extend into the central interior of the state. Now, some light snow will begin to push westward toward Tanana, but that'll end up over the eastern Brooks Range and North Slope as the bulk of the moisture drops into the Yukon Flats area and down into the mid and upper Tanana Valley, eastward into the Yukon, and then some of that could spill in to the northern northern Copper River Basin late tonight or by early tomorrow. Otherwise, south of the Alaska Ranges, look for an increase in the mid and high level clouds, and it'll stay clear over the eastern North Gulf Coast, Yakutat, and then rain slowly spreading northward across the into the central panhandle, possibly reaching Juneau late tonight or early tomorrow morning. Otherwise, moving on to Saturday, see periods of rain across the southeast coast all the way up into the Skagway area, possibly. Be very light up in in those areas from Haines to Juneau. The heavier amounts down along the frontal boundary in the southern southeast coast. Weak low there just south of Resurrection Bay, and tightening pressure gradient, again kicking those winds up maybe to 35 miles an hour to the east-northeast over the eastern interior. Also some pretty gusty winds from the northeast through the passes of the central and western Brooks Range, but conditions mostly clear there, and just some clouds on the eastern Arctic coastal areas. Main snow now pushing south. We're holding over the Tanana Valley, and some snow showers pushing into the Copper River Basin, even a chance of snow showers moving westward into the eastern and central Kenai Peninsula and the Chugach Mountains, possibly even into the Susitna Valley, and chance of showers also in the form of snow for the western Alaska Range. Otherwise, dry for Bristol Bay, the Alaska Peninsula. Looking for winds there, maybe 15 to 30 miles an hour in gusts at the highest, and then storm force winds with gusts to 60 miles an hour pushing into the Kiska Island to Shimianatu area, and winds slowly beginning to increase for the central Aleutians, probably up to small craft advisory level winds by tomorrow afternoon. And then for the day on Sunday, that front weakens as it advances eastward due to the main low center hanging back over the western Kamchatka Peninsula there, and that too weakening to about 990 millibars. So periods of rain will change to rain and snow showers from about Adak westward to Shimianatu in the afternoon, with much lighter winds in that area, and some chance of rain into Atka, but staying dry with light winds, maybe some clearing continuing for the eastern Aleutians, Pribilof Islands, especially the northern Bering Sea with that east-northeast flow keeping dry air from the interior, or keeping the skies clear over the northern Bering Sea, even along the southwest coast to the Alaska Peninsula. Kodiak Island, mostly sunny, dry conditions there, light northwesterly breezes, and pretty gusty winds through the Copper River Basin, Northway, and the southeast interior, south of the Yukon River. And again, those snow advisories or winter weather advisories continue for the Alaska Range into the eastern interior through noontime on Sunday. And then another weak trough brings a chance of some flurries to the eastern Arctic coast, showers over the Panhandle, as well as the North Gulf Coast, rain and snow showers along the North Gulf Coast. And looking at lows for tonight in the 40 to 45 degree range, pretty mild there for the southern Panhandle, and upper 30s to the north, and 30 to 35 for the North Gulf Coast, lows 30 to 35 here for south central Alaska, and mid-30s Kodiak Island, upper 20s for Bristol Bay, and in the 20s for the Kuskokwim Valley. And then the highs tomorrow, 35 to 40 in the Copper River Basin, upper 30s to mid-40s south central Alaska, mid-40s Kodiak Island, 40 to 45 Bristol Bay, and 35 to 40 for the Kuskokwim Valley. Highs up around Haines, Skagway in the lower 50s, otherwise in the 40s for the southeast coast. And then lows on Sunday morning, mostly near or into the lower 40s for the entire Panhandle, lower 30s for the North Gulf Coast, and in the 20s, lower 20s for the Susitna Valley, Matanuska Valley, Kenai Peninsula, 25 to 30, near 20 for the Copper River Basin, 10 to 15 for the Kuskokwim Valley, and lower to mid-20s for Bristol Bay. Highs near 40 on Sunday afternoon for Kodiak. Otherwise, upper 30s to lower 40s, south central Alaska, mid-20s for the Kuskokwim Valley, 30 to 35 for Bristol Bay, 45 to 50 for the Panhandle. And lows tonight up in the central interior, anywhere from 15 to 25, and a little below zero for the North Slope Arctic coast, 0 to 5 below into the Anatuvik Pass area, followed by highs 5 to 10 or 0 to 10 for the North Slope and the Arctic coast, more like 0 to 5, and in the 20s to lower 30s over the interior, and then colder on Sunday morning, lows down to a little below zero in the Yukon Flats, 5 to 10 for the Tanana Valley areas, and 10 to 15 below for the Arctic coast, followed by highs in the 20s, only 15 forecast high for Eagle, and mid-20s in the central interior, and a shade above zero for the north slope and the Arctic coast. And out to the southwest, mid-20s for the Pribilofs tonight, otherwise in the 30s for the Aleutians, lower 30s for the Alaska Peninsula. Highs tomorrow, upper 30s to lower 40s for the Alaska Peninsula, and 40 to 45 for the remainder of the Aleutians, and lower 30s for the Pribilof Islands. Now looking at the lows Sunday morning, southwest coast 15 to 20, mid-teens there for St. Lawrence Island, mid-20s for the Pribilofs, and in the 30s for the Aleutians, and upper 20s to lower 30s for the Alaska Peninsula, followed by highs in the upper 30s for the Peninsula, and 40 to 45 for the Aleutians, lower 30s for the Pribilofs.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Okay, flying weather for Saturday morning. Some IFR there north of the Alaska Range and over the upper Tanana Valley 40-mile country. Narrow band of IFR also along the Central Brooks Range. Otherwise, some marginal VFR spilling into the northern Copper River Basin, but southern Alaska VFR and southern Panhandle also marginal VFR conditions to the north and for the North Gulf Coast, and then VFR flying all the way out into the Bering Sea until you get to near Adak, and looks kind of marginal there to Chimianatu. And then for the afternoon, Saturday, conditions improve there, but some lingering IFR over the eastern Alaska Range, but just some areas of marginal VFR along the Alaska Range itself, and up along the upper Yukon River there, as well as the Copper River Basin, maybe to the Talkeetna, some marginal VFR, and also a little bit of marginal VFR on the north side of the eastern Brooks Range to Kaktovik, Barter Island. Otherwise, IFR pushing into the western Aleutians. Then for Sunday, that band of IFR pushes to about Kiska to Amchitka, but good VFR for Adak and Atka, as well as the Pribilofs, and much of, if not all of the central and eastern Bering Sea, even up through the Bering Strait, pretty much VFR into the Chukchi Sea. Interior, mostly VFR, but still some lingering IFR there over the eastern Alaska Range and the Northway and Tok areas, and also some lower conditions there on the eastern North Slope and Arctic coast. And the Panhandle now, marginal VFR. And then for Sunday afternoon, southeast coast marginal VFR, as well as Yakutat and the eastern Copper River Basin into the areas of, again, the eastern Alaska Range, and just to the north, some IFR possible. Otherwise, pretty good interior Alaska, mostly VFR. Some marginal VFR north of the eastern Alaska Range, the eastern Arctic coast. And then lower conditions, again, over the western Berings, trying to push eastward a little bit. So IFR probably for Adak, but pretty good elsewhere. And for Anaktuvik and Adigan tomorrow, mostly marginal throughout the day, lowest conditions early on, a little bit better in the afternoon. And for Lake Clark and Merrill, good VFR through Saturday, as well as rainy VFR flying through Saturday as well. And up to the north a little bit there, marginal VFR for windy, possible IFR in the northern entrance, especially early in the day. And for Isabel, same forecast, same pattern, marginal VFR, possible IFR northern entrance early. And from Mentasta, marginal VFR. Tanita looks good, VFR the entire day, as does Portage, good VFR, eastern and western approach. Chilkoot and White, VFR. Freezing levels, 4,000 to 5,000 feet there from the northern Bering Sea, St. Lawrence Island, in across the southwest interior, Kenai Peninsula, Kodiak Island, as well as Bristol Bay. Otherwise, about 2,000 feet or so for the Panhandle, and out over the western Aleutians. Icing with that next front, look for some isolated moderate rime icing pushing into the western Bering Sea, and from Chimianatu pushing eastward toward Amchitka, and then some areas of isolated moderate rime icing possible over the southeast interior, the moisture coming down from the north there, possibly getting as far south as the Chugach Mountains and the Susitna and Manuska Valley areas, and also for the Panhandle. jet stream showing northerly flow at about 85 knots, and the upper level low, another cold upper low dropping into the Copper River Basin at this elevation, ridging high pressure over the central Bering Sea, and then much stronger southwest flow at about 125 knots way out there to the west. And at 9,000 feet, north winds at about 40 knots over the southwest part of the state to Bristol Bay and the Aleutian Range, northeast, east-northeast over the northern interior, and then 80 to 85 knots southerlies and southwesterlies over the western Bering and the western Aleutian areas. 3,000 feet up to 75 knots over the western Aleutians out of the southwest. Lighter winds over the eastern Bering Sea under high pressure turn northerly along the southwest coast, and then northeast 45 knots over the western Brooks Range. Turbulence, look for moderate turbulence across areas of the northern and central interior, right on down in toward the Aleutian Range and Bristol Bay, as well as the western and central Aleutians. After the break, I'll be back with the marine forecasts.
Used to be that you could only warn one person about a tornado after it had already blown down someone else's barn.
Now, on average, we're able to issue a tornado warning 15 minutes before the tornado's even there, and that wouldn't be happening without Doppler radar.
This NexRad system has reduced fatalities on the order of 45% due to tornadoes since its advent.
We have a lot more information now about storms and being able to understand how they develop, how they produce severe weather, and how that information might be used to improve warnings for our National Weather Service partners.
The lab is unique in that we serve the nation by supporting the National Weather Service in its mission to protect lives and safe property by improving the accuracy and the lead time of severe weather warnings.
We have a legacy of radar research and converting existing technology from military to weather purposes.
A recycled Doppler radar led to the development of NexRad, installed nationwide in the early 90s. It allowed forecasters to see storms like never before.
Not only did we help bring that technology to the National Weather Service and to help protect lives and property, but we have continued to upgrade that technology, keep it relevant, and keep it state-of-the-art.
Recently, a major upgrade was added. Dual polarization technology takes the radar from 2D to 3D. Forecasters now know more about what type of precipitation is falling, which is very helpful during winter storms, as well as how much rain is accumulating, resulting in better flash flood warnings. The radar can also detect and track tornadoes based on debris. Looking to the future, the National Severe Storms Lab is testing the capabilities of phased array radar. Originally used by the U.S. Navy, the antenna scans the skies electronically rather than mechanically, allowing the radar to focus on a storm.
With current technology, we get a full picture or image of what is going on within a storm every 4 to 5 minutes. So it's more like a snapshot. Whereas with phased array radar, we get that picture of what's going on in the storm every minute. So it becomes more like watching a movie. So we can do adaptive, rapid scanning on the storms that matter most, being able to provide the information that's most relevant when and where it's happening.
Another advantage of phased array radar is its multifunction capability, providing weather and air traffic information simultaneously.
Number one, it is a system that promises to replace and expand upon the existing weather surveillance radars. Secondly, to replace aging air traffic surveillance radars. And number three, it offers a potential application to meet Department of Homeland Security and defense requirements for identifying and tracking non-cooperative aircraft. With the replacement of all these various radars with a single system, the American taxpayer could realize substantial savings in cost.
You have a lot fewer radars to maintain, and the electronic capability of this also reduces maintenance costs because you do not have moving parts.
Not too long ago, the ability to predict severe weather was thought to be impossible. During the past several decades, research conducted at the National Severe Storms Lab has developed life-saving tools like Doppler radar. We've progressed from no warning of threatening weather to about a 15-minute lead time, and current research promises to extend that much further.
Our knowledge of severe storms and how they behave, and our use and ability to use the Doppler radar technology is in a lot of cases a direct result of that close working relationship, that research to operations component that we get between the National Severe Storms Laboratory and a forecast office.
That history and understanding of how these data can be used by our users and doing the research to help advance the use of radar technology, really it's what we live for. It's in our lifeblood. It's in our history.
It's now easier than ever to be a part of weather research. We just launched the mPing app for both iPhone and Android users, and it's totally free. PING, which stands for Precipitation Identification Near the Ground, is a research project by the NOAA National Severe Storms Lab and the University of Oklahoma. With the mobile app, you can send us your weather observations on the go. Are snowflakes falling on your head? Is hail hitting your car? Just select what type of precipitation is falling and press submit. It's that easy. It takes about 5 seconds and it's anonymous. Reports can then be viewed online. Our scientists will compare your report with what the radar has detected. This helps us develop new radar technologies and techniques. Download the app today, share your reports, and let's work together to make our nation weather ready. Learn more here and follow us.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
On to marine forecasts for the south coast, east to southeast winds 15 knots with higher gusts, and the north coast, north to northeast winds 10 to 15 knots with seas running 4 to 5 feet. Lynn Canal, north winds 10 knots. Stevens Passage, north winds 10 knots. And for Clarence Strait, southeast winds 20 knots with 7-foot seas. And for the day on Sunday, south coast, south winds 15 knots, and then the north coast, east-southeast at 20 knots, with seas running 8 to 10 feet along the outer coastline. Otherwise, for Clarence Strait and Stevens Passage, look for southeast winds of 15 knots on Sunday with 3 to 5 foot seas. Lynn Canal, southeast winds 20 knots, seas 4 feet. Prince William Sound, Saturday, variable winds 10 knots, seas 2 feet. North Gulf Coast, variable winds at 10 knots with 4 to 6 foot seas. Northern Cook Inlet, variable winds 15 knots, and northeast winds 20 knots south of the Forelands, and west winds at 20 knots for Kamishak Bay, turn northwest at about 25 for the Barren Islands. And on Sunday, Cook Inlet, north winds 20 to 25 knots, seas 6 to 8 feet. Prince William Sound, northeast winds at 20 knots with 4 foot seas. Eastern North Gulf Coast, east northeasterlies 20 to 25 knots, and for the western North Gulf Coast, north winds 20 knots, and for Kamishak Bay, northwesterlies at 25. Barren Islands, north winds 30 knots, seas 8 feet. Kodiak Island, variable to west winds at 25 knots for the day Saturday. In the Alaska Peninsula, west-northwest winds 15 to 25 knots, with seas running 3 to 9 feet. And Bristol Bay, west winds 15 knots, seas 3 feet. And for Sunday, Kodiak Island, northwest winds 20 to 25 knots. And for the Alaska Peninsula, north to northwest winds 15 to 20 knots. And mostly north winds at 20 knots for Bristol Bay. For the eastern Aleutians, north to northwest winds 15 to 25 knots on Saturday. Adak and Atka, small craft advisories, southeast winds increasing to 25 knots. And we've got storm warnings from Kiska to Shemya for southeast winds at 50 knots, seas 21 feet. And for Sunday, for the western Aleutians, south to southwest winds 20 to 30 knots, seas as high as 15 feet. And the central Aleutians, south winds 25 knots. And for the eastern Aleutians, northwesterlies 15 to 20 knots with 4 to 5 foot seas. For the southwest coast, north to northwest winds at 20 knots. Pribilofs, north winds at 10 knots. St. Matthew Island, north winds 20 knots. And for St. Lawrence Island, north winds at about 20 knots. Then for Sunday, brisk wind advisory for Norton Sound, northeast winds picking up to 25 knots. Otherwise, St. Lawrence Island, northeast winds at 20 knots, and the Yukon Delta coast, northeast at 20. Small craft advisories, or I should say brisk wind advisories for the Kuskokwim Delta coast, north winds 25 knots. And for the Pribilofs, east winds at 20 knots with 4 foot seas, and north winds 30 knots for St. Matthew Island. Central and eastern Arctic coast tomorrow, northeast winds at 20 knots, and brisk wind advisories for the western Arctic coast, east-northeasterlies 25 to 30 knots. From Cape Thompson to Wales, winds will be northeast at 20. And for Sunday, Wales to Cape Thompson, northeast winds 15 to 20 knots, western Arctic coast, brisk wind advisories, east-northeast winds 25 to 30 knots, and the central coast, north winds at 15 knots, far eastern Beaufort Sea coast, east-west winds at 20. And for tonight, snow shifting southward, now over the north slope eastern Arctic coast, will be crossing the Brooks Range this evening, pushing into the eastern interior. And some of that could spill into the Copper River Basin, at least in the northern areas there north of Gulkana, more likely Paxton in those areas. And clouds on the increase south of there to the North Gulf Coast. Rain slowly moving northward across the Panhandle. And gales become storm force winds tomorrow for the western Aleutians, with increasing winds in the afternoon for Adak and Atka, but staying dry there. High pressure keeps it dry over the western interior, and chance of snow showers now into south central Alaska. And then for Sunday, that front out west really weakens as it spreads some rain into the central Aleutians and stays unsettled over the Panhandle. Still a chance of snow over the southeast interior, mostly sunny to the north and to the west.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.